Hello, and welcome to Leading Digital's Field Service Leaders podcast. I'm Alistair Clifford-Jones, and I'm the CEO of Leadent. And today, I'm delighted to welcome Stuart Powell. Stuart's had a very interesting career, starting off as a nightclub manager at the age of 18, where he really learned how to deal with people. And then he moved on, working in this country and in Canada, and ending up managing large field service teams. He's got a very interesting approach to field service, and it's all about culture, and it's all about getting people on board. And I hope you find this interesting and as informative as I did. Hi, Stuart. I know you've had a pretty fascinating career. It would be great to have a bit of insight into how you got into service leadership.
Firstly, good morning and thanks for having me on. It's great to be on. Sun's shining, so good lighting. So a bit about me. My career actually started in a nightclub at the age of 18. So I became a nightclub manager at the age of 18. So I guess managing people far older than me, it was quite a crash course in leadership and learning how to set standards and I guess earn respect and handle that pressure. From there, I went into cold calling at Southern Electric. So I was literally knocking doors in the pouring rain at dinner time in the midst of winter at times. So that really built the resilience and taught me that, rejection isn't the end, it's part of the process. So that was the start of shaping my leadership journey. I guess from there, I moved into multiple leadership roles at British Gas, first running large contact centres and then taking responsibility for large-scale field-based teams of engineers that were fitting smart meters, servicing and installing boilers, electricians, and later on even kind of EV installers. Leading hundreds of engineers across different disciplines really taught me that I guess field service is complex, it's demanding, but it's hugely impactful. And you're always looking to balance safety, technical expertise, and customer experience at scale. It's worth mentioning as well, I also got to spend a bit of time in Canada and the US setting up contact centers and field-based teams, which really gave me a global perspective on service delivery. And then more recently, I led operations at Certas Energy, leading and running multiple depots, hundreds of people, and a large P&L. That role itself combined pretty much everything from logistics, field service, renewables, safety, but really around culture and digital transformation, they were the key. So I guess whilst my path has been varied, the common thread throughout has really been leading people, driving transformation, and I guess making complex operations perform better.
So, given that kind of background, have there been any challenges that you think specifically shaped your journey?
Two spring to mind, to be honest, Alistair. I think the first one is around cultural resistance. It's something that, the word culture is bandied about a lot, but I think if you really strip it back, how many of us could really define culture or I guess work out how best to drive what the right, I guess the right culture is. So cultural resistance is something that's really shaped my journey. So in traditional industries like energy, I guess change can really feel threatening. So I learned early on, you can't just impose it. You've really got to take people with you, take them on the journey, involve them. And that means really listening and I guess role modeling the right behaviors when looking at a change, because you will get cultural resistance. I guess the second one, those early years knocking on doors in the rain really taught me, as I said earlier, about rejection and setbacks, that they're all part of growth. You don't always see it that way in the moment, but they are very much all part of growth. And that's carried me throughout every turnaround and every transformation since. I reflect now and I really draw on those experiences and also the way I felt at the time to help really shape my next steps in leadership.
It's interesting. If we talk about field service now, a lot of people talk about technology and technology being the silver bullet, but you haven't kind of mentioned technology per se in our discussions. Do you think it's the silver bullet we've been looking for?
It's a question I've seen a lot, especially on LinkedIn and a number of areas like that. So my view is that technology it's a fantastic enabler. It's a really fantastic enabler. I don't believe it's a silver bullet. No. I've seen predictive maintenance, routing optimization, digital dashboards deliver huge results, really kind of game-changing results for organizations, but only when people buy in. That's the key for me here, is that you need technology, but you need the buy-in of humans, of people along the way. So without the culture that I mentioned earlier, without the right level of collaboration, tech just becomes another system. So for me, it's not the silver bullet, but it's absolutely an enabler we need to drive performance.
So again, I think you've been very involved in change and transformation and all of that. Is there anything that's gone wrong that you've tried to implement?
Yeah, I think a large part of my career has been built on taking learnings, as I mentioned earlier. And one example I can think of is actually when we've rolled out a brand new digital routing system to really help, route and effectively dispatch work. And the reality is we were expecting instant results. You take this huge multi-million pound product, you take it off the shelf, you want to plug and play, you think you're going to get huge results. And instead, actually, adoption stalled when we tried to bring it in. And I think the reality is when we stopped and reflected, we could quickly realize we hadn't involved everybody in the rollout. We hadn't involved certain elements, whether it was drivers or people actually selling the product. We hadn't involved them in the design of the system we were looking to roll out. So areas that we thought we had nailed and that we're going to make it a great success, there were key elements or intricacies we'd not thought of. So actually, once we brought them back into the conversation, tweaked the routes based on their comments, their insight, the adoption actually started to skyrocket because, first of all, you've got that trust that you've involved colleagues in the decision. And secondly, you've drawn on their information. So a key lesson for me in that is innovation isn't just about technology, it's about co-creation along the way.
So in terms of co-creation, I guess that's collaboration and people working together.
Yeah.
Is that a bit of a theme that you've had in your career, do you think?
So collaboration is absolutely pivotal. When I think about the successes that I've had throughout my career, I'm a big believer on the importance of collaboration, especially within, field service team, where often people can be geographically placed in different locations. Yes, absolutely. For me, it's about how we get true collaboration, and true collaboration for me is around, we need to be trusting each other. We need to be having open dialogue, but it's also about effective challenge with all of my teams and colleagues. That challenge is absolutely fine as long as we keep above the line language and we challenge professionally. I want to see that level of challenge because that really drives true collaboration. So I think that it's really, really important that we support our teams. We create an environment where they feel they can truly collaborate. And I think as leaders, we have to role model that behavior as well. I could think of an example where, I've joined an organization and it felt that there was a very much a hierarchy and the team looking upwards at me for solutions. If there was a problem encountered, well, Stuart, what's the answer? And actually, my view is always, well, you're the experts in the room. Let's work through it collectively as a team. And that was a new feeling for a lot of people in that organization. But actually, when you drive that feeling of, look, don't just look at me for a solution in the hierarchy, let's collectively look for the answer. Let's understand what the problem statement is and work through it together. I think you start to build true collaboration.
Interesting. That's sort of internally within the team, but how about with other departments and customers?
The collaboration element in particular, I think
Yeah.
I'd say into the department, it's an interesting one. Again, I could think about a role that I took on and I guess the challenge from day one, the problem statement you could say when I took the role on was, look, we've got a lot of in-house fighting. We've got operations and sales. Often what we see, Alistair, in companies where there's a lot of finger pointing. There's a lot of, well, we're selling it, operations can't get it out. And operations saying, well, you're overselling, so we're letting the customer down. And it was my job to effectively come in and look at how we can break down the silos and also work with those teams, as you mentioned, those different teams in getting together. And actually, what I found is that the best way to approach it is that you really need to engage up front the leadership team. You need really to engage up front to understand, what do we want from this? What's the challenge at the moment? What's the reason it's happening, and how do we improve? And you almost create a team contract as a leadership team. And how do we want to be seen? What language do we want to use around colleagues? And then the art then is about role modeling those behaviors. So genuinely going out, role modeling the behaviors in front of the teams. And then you start to find that more people will begin to buy into that. So I find that's the first phase in creating true collaboration. And secondly, as I mentioned earlier, it's about giving people that space to be open and honest in a professional manner where they feel their voice really does count. I think the more that people can come to the table with ideas, and equally, it's not about allowing every idea to come to fruition, because you can't run an organization that way by giving everybody what they want. But I think if you create an openness and transparent communication where you can effectively say, look, we've taken this idea, it's not going to work, but let me explain to you the reasons we don't feel it's going to work. Often that closes a loop for people. And equally, being able to go back and play back to teams, you've created this idea, which you've said we've done as a result. I think that starts to really create that collaborative nature.
That's interesting. Do you find, is there a lot of training that goes? I mean, how do you make that sort of culture become normal?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, a big part of it is role modeling. You need to
Okay.
be absolutely relentless as a leader in the way that you role model the behaviors. Often there's many books talk about like a locker room mentality whereby, you think about sports. If you're in the locker room as a team, you can really challenge and say your piece and really challenge one another. But as soon as you leave that locker room, it's a united front. You don't leave that locker room and start saying, wow, this is so X person's idea. I don't agree with it, but we have to do it. You leave with a united front and you effectively say, look, this is the route we're going down. These are the reasons why. This is how we're going to execute it. What support do you need, etc. I think that's the starting point for me, is that you really need to relentlessly role model those behaviors. And it's also about accountability. It's really important that we hold everybody to account. About hierarchy, it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're the MD of a company, somebody routing the product, somebody selling the product. We should all be holding each other to account with what we've said. I think that starts to really drive that level of collaboration, which is absolutely vital. So I think, to answer your question, there's also training's great, but for me, if you don't set the right tone, set the right culture, you could train someone 4, 5, 6 times and still get the same result. But I think actually, if you're leading effectively, hand in hand with some of that training, then you're going to get those results, which is absolutely key.
It's fascinating because I think so often it's sort of like, oh, we've done this training course,
Yeah.
it's done. This is our cultural change, and actually nothing's changed, and I think particularly with engineers who have chosen to work in the field because they want a level of independence, it's much harder to bring that kind of culture together, I think. So,
Agreed.
so in terms of the future of field service, we got everyone talking about technology, everyone talking about different things happening. What do you think field service will look like in maybe 5 years' time? Do you think it will fundamentally change?
I think if you and I had been sat down 5 years ago asking that question, and now a time machine had come forward, we'd be probably surprised by the amount of change field service has seen. And I think it's going to be the same again. I guess I'd probably put it down to 3 key shifts that I see. Sustainability is probably the first one. So I genuinely believe that will move from a nice to have for a lot of organizations to a non-negotiable. Is going to be absolutely key. Digitization, which we've already seen in abundance, that will accelerate further. So the predictive tools that we have, AI, we know is absolutely huge at the moment. Automation, those factors will be absolutely key. But the third one, actually, ironically, I think human connection will matter more than ever. So, companies that thrive will be those that manage to blend the cutting edge technology with authentic human service. So I think that's going to be more important than ever. I know you and I discussed briefly before, Alistair, and I've been talking to colleagues and friends about it, about the part that AI plays at the moment. And it's such a huge tool. But I genuinely believe it shouldn't be the pilot in businesses. It should be the co-pilot. We should be hand in hand with AI, but not losing that authenticity from a human perspective. I fear that at times, with ChatGPT and all the wonders of the world we have, that an email could be sent between 2 colleagues and AI can create a response and send it back. But those responses are often hollow and we lose the human touch. I think companies that really blend that cutting edge technology with true authentic human service will be the ones that really thrive. So 3 factors, I think, in the next 5 years where we'll see change.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm seeing a little bit that companies are thinking AI is going to sort of save us a lot of money. And I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a dip in performance from field service when everyone sort of switches to AI. And then all of a sudden it's going to be, oh no, we've lost that connection. We now need to build that back. And the companies that will do well are the ones that won't suddenly switch to an AI being the standard tool. So what's next for you in the next 24 months, would you say?
So, as you know, I'm transitioning at the moment between roles. It's been a very exciting time, but I guess my focus for the next 24 months is really to be part of an organization that truly wants to grow and scale, first and foremost, and one that's ambitious, but also willing to listen and adapt to how we can make those marginal gains that add up to the bigger results. So I've always thought it's great to be part of a company where you are the missing piece of the jigsaw and not the same piece of the jigsaw as everybody else. I think is absolutely key. So for me, success always comes back to three C's, and people that have worked with me over the years will know how much I live and breathe with these. So the three C's for me are customer. So it's really important that we're delivering an experience that builds loyalty, that builds trust with our customers. The colleague. So creating an environment where people feel empowered, they feel safe, and they really feel engaged is vitally important. And finally, commerciality. So driving that profitable, sustainable growth in an organization is key. So the way I've always thought about it is when you get those three aligned, growth and operational excellence, they follow naturally. And personally, I want to bring my experience of transformation to a business that's really obsessed with those principles and serious about building long-term results. And I guess above all, I want to be part of something that leaves a really positive footprint moving forward. So exciting times ahead for sure, but that's where I see the next 2 years.
It's fascinating. It's been fascinating talking to you. But just as a bit of fun, I'm always interested to know what's the most unusual or unexpected challenge you've had in terms of field service?
Most unusual challenge as part of field service. So I mean, there's been multiple. I think the trying to wow the customers always one for sure. I could think of multiple customers over the years that have created, I guess, asks for us that we've had to try and accommodate as best we can. The call trying to ensure that we'd provide a customer with a smart meter, and it transpired that they had monkeys and zoo animals at their property, and the smart meter was actually right by the cage. So obviously trying to balance this, the safety element was key there. I think you always think you've seen it all or heard it all, but there's always more to come, which is great. What I will say, though, I'll tell you one area that I do love. I know it's not the question you've necessarily asked, but one area that I love in field sales that I hope never goes away with AI, and I hope never goes away with technology, is the whiteboard. I am the world's biggest fan when it comes to a whiteboard. So no matter how advanced our systems get, Alistair, there's always something about being in a meeting room and having a whiteboard there where you can just get people round it, gather around. There's a visual, you can get up there and really collaborate. So that's probably the key for me.
Well, collaboration's a key feature of almost everything you've talked about today. So it's interesting. I mean, I think it is so important in terms of going forward, and it's nice to talk to someone when I'm not just talking about technology and field service. So I really appreciate your time, and it's been very informative.
It's been a pleasure, and I look
Thank
forward
you.
to speaking to you soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks.